We are up to Wednesday, August 2nd here in Math 1332. We have two last sections of Chapter 8, and then tomorrow we'll be doing the last two sections for this week, which is the beginning of Chapter 11. So today we have 8.7, which is about buying houses, and then 8.8 is about credit cards, two other topics that affect most people in real life. So 8.7, they have this payment formula, and we use this actually with the annuities section. And it turns out it's the same payment formula for cars as well, just houses are higher priced objects. So this isn't really a new formula here. This is from the formula for when you're doing the future value of an annuity, and then all of a sudden you switch to solving for the payments. So it made things in the formula switch places, but again, the good news is they just give it to you right here in the problem. So I got the same payment formula from before, and we want to get a $139,000 home, and we want to get the monthly payments rounded to the nearest dollar. Now, unlike a car, there's a required 20% down payment on houses, because if you stop paying on a car, they can just come take the car away and try to sell it for something. If you stop paying on a house, often it's too complicated or too much lost money for the bank for them to try to do something about it. So by putting 20% down, at least if you get to a point where you can't pay for the house anymore, they got a large sum of money out of you already. So there's a 20% down payment required. If you don't pay that, or if you don't have the money for it, then often what happens is they make you buy insurance so that they'll get paid if you somehow don't pay your house payment. And that's, you definitely want to have this 20% down, because otherwise you're just buying insurance that you don't really need. So actually, back in the other sections, when we remember those annuity problems where people were like, they were in their 20s and they started putting money away for, it would be like 8 years or 12 years or something like that, while they just first got a job, this would be a good thing to do, is save up for this 20% down payment on a house someday. So you're fresh out of college, you just got a job, you may or may not even be close to getting married yet. Even if you are, it's good to do this before you just jump right into a house. The cost of the home is financed with a 30-year fixed mortgage at 6.5%. And then, okay, so we got these different parts to complete. So find the required down payment. That's not too hard to do, because there is the price of the house, $139,000. And it's always 20%. It's just a standard in the industry. It's always a 20% down payment. So as usual, change the percent to a decimal by moving the decimal over twice, or by 20% dividing by 100. 20 divided by 100 is 0.2 or 0.20. If I multiply 0.20 by the price of the house, that's how much you have to pay up front when you close on the house. $27,800. So see, that's enough money that most people don't have that just laying around to pay at some point. So this is how this is related to the earlier section. You might do an annuity in your mid-20s after you get out of college and save up for 5-10 years, whatever, until you have this down payment for whatever kind of house you want to get. So the bad news is you got to come up with this large sum of money that most people don't have. The good news is after you pay that, you own that much of the house already. So this is almost $28,000. It's like you own $28,000 of the house out of $139,000. You basically own 20% of the house at that point. So find the mortgage amount. You already paid this to the bank, so it's going to make the price of the home go down. So now you subtract this because you're paying that much of the price, basically. So a $139,000 home, you're paying almost $28,000 of it up front. There's only $111,200 left to spend to pay for the house. Now, most people, almost most people have no way of paying this out of their back pocket unless you're like a Elon Musk or a Bill Gates type of person. You just whip that out of your back pocket. So most of us have to finance it with a house loan, a mortgage, they call that. And the most common kind is 30 years, although you can do 20 years or 15 if you want. The higher the years, the lower the monthly payment is. So that's why most people, it's going to be a big expense no matter what you do. So most people do 30 years just to keep the monthly payment roughly equivalent to what it costs to rent a house. If you go with a 15-year or a 20-year, then the payments each month can get much larger to where somebody maybe can't afford that. But if you have a decent enough job where you're making good money, maybe you want to do the less time because you'll pay for the house sooner and it'll be less interest in the long run. So we own almost $28,000 of the home, and we still have about $111,000 left to pay for the next 30 years. How much must be paid for 3 points? Okay, here's another thing. So the banks, they get paid for doing all this. There's a lot of paperwork and legal issues that lawyers need to work out. And so this is the price that you have to pay in order for all that so they can get their money. So they call these points in a mortgage. 3 points literally just means 3%. So 3% of the price of the house, and remember 3% is 3 out of 100, 0.03. So the same way we did the 20% of the total cost, if we now do 3% of the mortgage amount, this is just an extra fee you got to pay. So you might want to account for that. If you were like saving money for 5 or 10 years, you might want to account for this. Although this homework problem won't let you do it, but usually in real life, they'll just roll this into the price that you're going to borrow from the bank. So if you multiply 0.03 times 111200, there's an extra fee of $3,336. This is the bank's profit for doing all this. So this homework problem is assuming that you're a Donald Trump type and you can just whip that out of your back pocket. Supposedly you're just paying this also in addition to that $27,000 amount. But in most real situations, they would just add this to that $111,000 and do a mortgage with both Part B and Part C combined. But we're going to calculate it as if that was already paid and it's just kind of like lost money. But there's still a lot of benefits to home ownership to that, even though it sounds kind of bad to just give $3,000 away for nothing. The alternative is to not own a home and then always live in an apartment and rent your whole life. And then as soon as you leave the rental, you have nothing for it. With a home, you are gaining what's called equity. So even if you don't live there for 30 years, say you live there for 10 years, and you pay this $111,000 down to like $60,000 or so, then out of the $140,000 the home was originally worth, if you only owe $60,000 on it, you've basically gained $80,000 in profit. And the other nice thing is home prices go up over time, generally, not necessarily every single moment in time, but if you live there for 10 years, most likely the house will be worth more than $140,000, and sometimes significantly more. So say the value of it goes up to like $200,000 10 years from now. Unlike cars, if you use a car, the value goes down. Houses, even though you use them and they get old, the values go up. So the house might be worth $200,000 10 years from now. And if you're down to $60,000 on how much you owe on the house, if you sold it for $200,000, you would have to pay the $60,000 you still owe, but you would get a profit of $140,000, unlike renting where you don't get anything when you leave. So in theory, you could live there for 10 years and walk away with the amount of money that the house originally cost. Okay, but that's just a side issue that this problem's not about. This one wants to know, find the monthly payment excluding, now here, see, this thing can be a lot more complicated than this homework's making it. here's another thing too. You got taxes and insurance. That's often rolled into the price. Every year you have to pay like school taxes and property taxes. And most people, again, you get hit with $1,000 school bill, a school tax bill, or a property bill. Most people can't just pay that extra $1,000 every so often. And then insurance, that's another 1,000 or so every year as well for home insurance. And then maybe you live in a flood area and you have to get flood insurance and all this kind of stuff. But so there are a lot of costs that that maybe you're not expecting when you go to do this. But even still, even with all these extra things, it's still, if you can live in a house for a while, it's almost always worth it as opposed to just renting, if you're able to afford it. And these are normally rolled into the price too. So if you go up to a homeowner and ask them, how much are you paying per month for this? And they say $1,200, that's not actually just the money that they owe from buying the house. That usually includes all the taxes and the insurance. They just roll it into your monthly payment. So that way you don't have to hassle it and have to come up with large sums of money every so often. It just kind of evens it out over the whole year. But it does make your monthly payment higher than what you're going to see right now. So we're just ignoring all that for a moment and saying, how much would our monthly payment of our house be just from this loan of $111,200? So that's where we're going to use this formula right here. Okay, so the payments you make each month, this is the same formula as I said that we did with cars and with annuities. So payments is the amount that you are financing of the house. What's the present value of the house, in other words? P, present value. And then you have this R divided by N. That's normally in the denominator, but it got flipped to the numerator when you're solving for the payment. And then you have this bracket, 1 minus 1 plus R over N. And because it flipped to the bottom, it got a negative exponent instead of a positive. But that's all it right here. So in a realistic example, we would add these two amounts together to get this P value right here. But in this homework, they just ignore this and assume that somebody could just pay that. So you're only going to put the $111,200 in for this P right here, whatever the price of the house is after you took the 20% out. So I'm financing a loan for $111,200 for the rest of the cost of the home. And I got 6.5% from the bank. So make that 065. Houses and cars are always monthly, so definitely N is 12. Okay, then in our denominator we have 1 minus 1 plus, same exact fraction. That's the one nice thing, is that those two fractions are always the same. Don't forget the negative for the exponent. The 12 will come next. And the most common thing for houses is 30 years, but there are options to do 15 or 20 if you can afford a higher payment. In fact, you could repeat this problem number 1 and change the 30 to 20 or 15 or both, and you could see how much of a difference does it make on the payments. How much higher will they go? If you do less years, the payments are going to go higher. So you might not be able to afford that, but the good news is if you can afford it, you should do that, because then you'll pay a whole lot less interest over the life of the loan. Okay, so I always like to do the exponent first. 12 times 30. 12 times 30 is 360. You're going to make 360 total payments if you stay there for all 30 years and living in that house. So the exponent will be negative 360. I'm going to do the fraction next, and this one might not be too bad. If they would have left it 0.06 divided by 12, that would have came out real nice. But 0.65 divided by 12, yeah, that one's not so nice. 0.0541666666, repeating. 0.0541 and then all sixes after that. Okay, so I guess what I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply this 111,000 and get the numerator done right away since it's one step away. Whoops, too many zeros. So I'm taking this fraction times the 111,000, and that's the numerator. So the numerator is 602.333 repeating. Okay, so let me do the fraction again. 0.65 divided by 12. I typed that wrong. 0.065 divided by 12. Then you have to add 1 to it. Now raise it to the negative 360th power. Raise to the 360 negative. And then you're supposed to do 1 minus it, but I'm going to do minus 1 of it, which will make it wrongly negative, and then I can just unnegative it with this plus minus button. So there's the denominator. The denominator is 85697, but real messy decimal. And I would like to do 602.333 divided by this, but if I do this divided by 602.333 and just put a whole bunch of threes, and then you won't have any rounding issues. But this is the backwards version of how I wanted to divide it, so that's why the answer doesn't look like a house payment. But if you hit the 1 over button, this will be your house payment. So the monthly house payment should be $702. And I think they said dollars, so $703. Since there's an 8 here, we need to add 1 to the 2. If it was dollars and cents, we would say 702.86, since there's a 9 right there. But I think they wanted dollars, so 703. See, the actual monthly payment would be higher than that because definitely there would be taxes and insurance included. And probably this 3,000 would be included too. So that's what they'd normally do, is they would include the 3,000 and they would include taxes and insurance, and they would just put all that in there as they calculate the monthly payment. And it can make a $700 monthly payment go up to like $1,000 or a little more. But that way you know how much you're paying every month, and you don't get any surprises and all of a sudden it's June and your insurance is due. Oh, you need $1,200 for insurance. So 703. So they're kind of ignoring the more complicated parts here at least. So find the total cost of interest over 30 years. This is a part that might scare you off a little bit, but this is like we did before. So take the monthly payment, and if you live there for 30 years, you're going to pay that 630 times. Now, this is one nice thing. This is unlike rent. Rent goes up over time. So if you rent an apartment and then your lease comes up in a year, they can increase the monthly cost to live there. But if you do this loan, you get that $703. The only thing that'll change, that won't change. Your insurance and your taxes might go up over time. But the 703 part of your monthly payment for the house, that'll be the same for all 30 years. That's why it's called a fixed mortgage. So that's one nice thing, is the price of your house never goes up for the whole 30 years. But 703 times 360, this is how much money you're actually going to pay. Whoops. 703 times 360. It's going to be a lot more than that 111,000 amount. In fact, it's often more than double what you would if you had the cash just to pay for the house. See, it's a little more than double, 253,000. If you live there for all 30 years, you'll end up paying $253,080 just for the price of the house. That's not counting insurance, taxes, and all that other stuff. In the house, you only took a mortgage out for 111. So this is my point. If you're an Elon Musk and you have this in your back pocket, you're just going to pay 111,000 and you own the house. It's that easy. But most of us don't have that in our back pocket. In fact, most of us don't make that much in a couple of years. So most people can't do it any other way. They just have to do the mortgage and live with this high cost of interest. But there's still more benefits to just renting. So if I take the total amount of money I spent for 30 years and subtract what I mortgaged for the house, not the actual price of the house, because I paid $28,000 off the bat. So I'm paying $141,880 in interest. 141,880, which is more than the 111 that I was mortgaging the house for. 104 is 30,000 more than what the house cost. So I'm basically paying double for the house. But 30 years from now, this house might be worth $500,000. That's the thing, is that it goes up in value. So even though it seems like a bad deal to give the bank more money in interest than the house even costs itself, imagine buying a $30,000 car and having to eventually pay $60,000. At least with cars, it's not that bad, because two reasons why. One is that the price is much lower, and secondly, you do it in 3, 4, 5, or 6 years instead of 30 years. But this is also why if you can do it in 20 or 15 years instead of 30, the interest will be a lot less, even though the monthly payments will be higher. So 141,880. There are people that live in their house for more than 30 years too. Some people, they live there their whole life. They buy the house in their late 20s or early 30s, and they're still there when they're 70 or 80 and retired. And they paid the 30 years off long ago. If you reach that point, you don't have any rent at all. You have a house free. You don't have any house payments or rental at all. And if your house is worth $500,000, you could sell it and have all this profit too. So there's a lot of benefits to home ownership, even though there's a number of downsides to it as well. Okay, I guess this is a second example of this. We're trying to buy a small cabin, so maybe somebody already owns a home, and now that's another thing. People that own homes, they often buy more than one. That's how you can really get rich, is in real estate, owning more than one property. And then if you're not using one of them, you can rent it out, or some people buy them just to rent them out and they never even live there themselves. The price of a small cabin is $60,000. So maybe they want this as a summer vacation home, or maybe they're going to rent it out and make income off it. Same formula. The bank requires a 5% down payment because this isn't a physical home that they're going to live in all the time. And it's a smaller amount to finance, so that's why normally it's 20%, but here they're doing a smaller 5%. Okay, there's two options here. They can do a 20-year fixed mortgage at 9.5% or 30 years at 9.5%. See, this is what I mentioned last problem. If you can do it in less years, your payments are going to be higher every month, but you'll save a whole lot in interest if you can do this. So if you ever buy a home yourself, you might want to do this yourself on the side. You can calculate this stuff yourself and figure out what's my monthly payment for 30 years, what's my monthly payment for 20 years, and see how much damage that second one is. Okay, so we're just going to have to do this twice. Most of it will be the same, just one number is going to change. So it's a oh wait, we got to take out the 5%. I almost forgot. So 60,000, but we're doing a 5% down payment. So let's just do that off to the side here. It's a $60,000 home. 5% is 0.05. Once we pay this up front, we own that much of the cabin. So if we pay them $3,000 right now when we close on the cabin, now you might have to save up to get to that point, but after you've saved up for it, you pay them $3,000 day one, you own $3,000 of the home. You own 5% of it, actually, of the cabin. So then you only need to take out a mortgage for $57,000 because you own $3,000 of it already. So that's the present value is $57,000. That's how much you need to borrow from the bank. And the interest rate here is 0.95. And we always do monthly for homes and cars. And then in the bottom, 1 minus, 1 plus, R over N again. And then to the negative 12 times, and I think they want 20 first. 20 year, then 30 year. Yeah, so we'll do the 20 first. So all of this is just like problem 1 right here. Do the exponent first. 12 times 20. That's going to be 240 payments if you stay there all 20 years. Or if you own it for all 20 years. Let's hope that 095 divided by 12 isn't too messy. Wow, it is messy. Okay. 00791 66666. 00791 00791 666, repeating. Okay, so I'm just going to take that and multiply it by the 57,000 right away. So I can figure out the numerator right away. And this numerator will be the same when I do part B as well. So, and that came out real nice, 451.25. The numerator is going to be 451.25 in both part A and part B. Because in part B, the only thing that's going to change is I'm going to change that 20 to a 30. But it's in the denominator, so it doesn't affect the numerator. Okay, so once again, 095 divided by 12 is a messy decimal. But if I add 1 to it, now raise it to the negative 240th power. And then I'm going to backwards type -1. It's supposed to be 1 minus, but I'm doing it backwards, -1. That's why it's coming out negative, even though it shouldn't be negative. Take the negative way to correct that. And then I'm going to divide by the numerator, which is also backwards. So I'm dividing by 451.25, but that's backwards. It's supposed to be 450 divided by that, not the other way around. So if I hit the 1 over button, that corrects it. So if you could do this in 20 years instead of 30 years, just the part of the cabin money is $531. And let me see if they want dollars or cents. Dollar. Okay, good. So what was it? $531. And the reason it's less than problem number 1, $703, is because this was a much higher priced home. This was $111,000. This one's only $57,000. It's like half. So the cost of the cabin's half of the previous problem, but the monthly payment for 20 years would be $531. The monthly payment for 30 years is going to be less than that for sure. Because if you do a longer period of time, the benefit is the payments are lower. But the downside is you pay a lot more in interest. So now let's repeat this for 30 years. And really the only thing that's going to be different is this right here will be 30. So the exponent will be the same as it was in problem number 1. It's going to be the negative 360. So I already know the numerator is 451.25. I'm going to go to the parenthesis part of the denominator and do the fraction first. 095 divided by 12. That's that real long messy decimal. Add 1 to it. But now, instead of raising it to 240, I'm going to raise it to the negative 360. That's the only difference in this whole calculation. And then I'm supposed to do 1 minus this, but I'm going to do this minus 1 backwards. And that's why it's negative when it shouldn't be negative. Take the negative away. And then I'm going to backwards divide by 451, but it was supposed to be 451 divided by that. I'm doing it backwards, so that's why I need to hit the 1 over to correct it. See, this isn't that significant of a difference. This is $479. So we're talking $50 extra a month. This probably for most people, they would prefer the higher monthly payment because it's not that much more, as opposed to saving all that interest. It's going to be a significant difference in interest if you go with the 30-year one. Now, if I redid, maybe I could redo this one real quick just to show you. What if I did the fraction 0.065 divided by 12 and then add 1 to it? What if I raise this to the negative 240, because that's what it would be if I did 20 years? Turns out 30 years is always 360 and 20 years is always 240. Okay, and then minus 1 backwards, so I need to unnegative it. And then divide by the 602.33333, but that's backwards too. So 1 over. See, 829. If I would have done problem number 1 for 20 years instead of 30 years, it would have been $829 every month. That's over $100 more a month. And this is just the house cost. We're not even talking insurance and taxes and the fees. So when you add the insurance, the taxes, and the fees, this is probably going to go over $1,000. This could go like up to $1,200, $1,300, something like that. And it can get to the point where somebody just can't afford that. They'll maybe default on their loan just because the house is costing too much money. So $100 extra a month, some people can't budget for that. But $50, maybe you could. Maybe you could, maybe not. But that it's more feasible here. So 531 minus 479. This is only $52 more per month. That's what they're getting at here. Okay, so how much is the monthly payment for the 20-year option? That's the higher one, 531. And then how about for the 30? That's the 479. Okay, now it says calculate the total cost of interest for both mortgages. How much does the buyer save with the 20-year option? Okay. So all we have to do is multiply by the exponents. The 531, that came from the 20-year mortgage. And that was the 240 exponent. So the 531 needs to be multiplied by the 240. And this will be how much you'll actually pay for it in the long run out of the $57,000. So you're going to pay 531 every month for 20 years. That'll be 240 payments. Oops. 531 times 240. You'll actually, for this $57,000 loan, you'll end up paying $127,440. Again, double, more than double. $127,440. But the 479, that one's having 360 payments to do it in 30 years. So multiply this one by 360. 479 times 360 is 172,000. That's like triple what the cabin cost. 172,440. So now subtract this, and this is how much more you're paying in interest to go with the smaller monthly payments. So if I do 172,440 minus 127,440, that's $45,000 that you could have extra. So this is the question you'd have to ask yourself. Is it worth it to pay $52 more per month to save $45,000 in the next 20 years? That's how much extra income you would have in your wealth, whatever your net worth is. You would have $45,000 extra in 20 years from now, just by paying $50 more every month. That's how much of a difference it makes. But if sometimes the 20-year loan has such a higher monthly payment that somebody just can't afford it. So sometimes most people go with the 30-year loan just to keep the payments as low as possible. Okay, here's another. This is different, but they're trying to hit you with as many realistic examples that you might get in your life as possible. So it says advice from most financial advisors states to spend no more than 28% of your gross monthly income on your mortgage payment. This is a way to plan to make sure you're not going to get in a financial situation where you can't afford your house, because then if you default on it, you lose it and everything you've paid for into it so far goes away. And to spend no more than 36% on your gross monthly income for total monthly debt. And that gives you enough money left over to buy things you need like food and gas and clothes and entertainment and everything else you want to do in your life. So it says, suppose a family has a gross annual income of $40,800. What's the maximum they should spend on their mortgage each month? It shouldn't be more than 28% of that. So take how much money you take in a year. If a family takes in $40,800, and you might know this from every year you pay your taxes, you find this amount out. So that's how they could check their tax record from last year. This is how much money we made last year. We're not supposed to spend more than 28% on our mortgage. So multiply this by 28% or 0.28. This could be the deciding factor of whether you should do the 30-year or the 20-year based on what this calculation comes out to. Now, this is in the year. This is yearly, so we're doing monthly. We need to divide this by 12. $952. So that's your maximum amount to spend on your house. And you might need to factor in, it's going to be higher than this amount here. That's just the amount for the mortgage. That doesn't count the taxes and the insurance, and you might want to have a little extra in case of an emergency of some kind. Maybe the washing machine breaks or the AC goes out and you need to repair it. So it always helps to have a little extra for that too. But the point is, you should only spend $952 each month on the total cost of your home. And that's where deciding something like this could cause you to go with the one that's going to hurt you in the long run more. You might need to keep this low enough so you don't go over whatever this turns out to be. These aren't the same problems, but just so that's where you take this into account. Whoops. 952. So then, the same way you did Part A, Part B is the same thing, except you multiply by this 36% over here. They're saying you should spend no more than 36% on all your debt, whatever it is. What you got, houses and cars and whatever your bills are, your energy bill, your water bill, anything that you get billed for and have debt over, credit card debt, all that, you should roll that into one and say, okay, if I only make $40,000 in a year times 0.36, 40,800 is my income, and I shouldn't spend more than 36% on all debt. So in a year, I have $14,688 to spend on debt. And if I do it monthly, divide by 12, that gives me $1,224 as a maximum each month. Don't spend more than this or you're going to go further into debt. And again, these aren't set in stone, but they're just guidelines to go by. If you can reach these goals, and maybe one month you don't, but try to average it out for a whole year. Okay, so if the family's monthly mortgage payment is 80% of what they can afford, so you don't have to spend the maximum. You could get a house that costs a little less so that you're not getting to your maximum, and that gives you some leeway in case there is an emergency or something. So what if they only spend 80% of the maximum they can afford? The maximum they can afford on their mortgage is this $952. What if they're able to find a home that's only 80% of that cost? $952 times 0.80. If their monthly mortgage payment was $761.60, or if we're rounding to the dollar, $762. If they can see, that's another thing, you can compare homes. Maybe in one area you'd spend $952 on your monthly mortgage, but in another area the houses are a little less and it's only $762. That just saved you almost $200 a month. And this is your total debt you're supposed to not go over every month. And if you're spending $762 on your house, if you subtract these two, that'll be how much you have for all other debts, like car payments, water bills, electric bills, TV or whatever entertainment you want to spend every month, subscriptions to things, anything like that. So it leaves you $462 to work with for all your other debt. And again, this is just made up numbers. Why did this have to be 80%? That somebody was just suggesting that. So this is just so you can do this problem, but it's not that these are set in stone that everybody should live this way. Okay, did the rounding affect that? Let's try that again. 80% of their mortgage, 952 times 0.80 is 761. 462, yeah. A monthly on all other debts. These two should add up to that. Oh no, it's 762. Did I do wrong on that part? Part B, okay, we got that. So there's the 80%. I'm not sure what's wrong with this one. Okay, so they wanted the dollars and cents, even though it said dollars for the other stuff. Okay, so yeah, see, I had it right here. I just thought they wanted it rounded to the dollar. 462 and 40 cents. That was the answer. I was putting, at first I put 462 in and it was wrong. I tried 461 and 463, but I don't see where it says round to the cent on this one though. That's weird. Okay, well that was weird because the first two were dollars and then this one was cents and it doesn't say that anywhere in here. So I guess because once I took 80% of this, that turned it to cents. 952 times 0.80. So once you get a decimal here, I guess they want you to keep working with that. So I should have done, I did that 952 times 0.80, and then you're supposed to subtract that from this 1224. Although I'm doing it backwards is why it's negative. So don't round that to the dollar. Again, I had to get it wrong to see what they wanted, but 462 and 40 cents. Okay, describe two advantages of renting over home ownership. There's benefits. There's nothing in life that's better all the time. Otherwise, everybody would do it. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both of these. There is some advantages to renting. For example, if anything breaks, the landlord's responsible for it. If you own your home and something breaks, you got to pay for it. Now, tax advantages happen to people that own their home, so there is no tax advantage to renting. Renting provides significant tax advantage. No, that's the other way around. Home ownership does. A renter can build up equity. No, that's a homeowner. See, these are advantages of home ownership. No down payment. See, that's an advantage of renting. And that was one thing that I said too, was you got to come up with this money and you might need to save for it for years till you can afford it. But there's a down payment and then there's the points that the banks profit for doing all the paperwork and legal fees. So that's definitely true about renting, is you don't have to have a down payment or points. There is generally a security deposit as a return. Yeah, see, that happens when you rent. So as long as you keep the place in good shape, you'll get your security deposit back. There's no chance of rent increasing over time. No, that's a disadvantage of renting. It actually does increase over time. And there's no property taxes. That's true for the renter, but it says two advantages, so that's why this can't be the answer. That's just one advantage. Oh no, it says select the two that apply. Okay. So maybe by two, this is what they mean. These two options. There's no property taxes for renters. That's only for homeowners. Yeah. So there are some advantages of renting. You can also just leave whenever you need to. If you own a home, you're best off not leaving right away, or you're going to really take a big hit financially. But in renting, if you once your lease is up, you're free to go somewhere else, and it's no big deal. Okay, so I got 3 of these 4 correct. And really, I got 3 correct, but I just messed up. I didn't know they wanted dollars and cents on that one. So try that yourself then, and remember part C of number 3 wants dollars and cents, not I thought it just wanted dollars, so I messed that up. Okay, so we are now done with 8-1, 8-3, 8-4, 8-5, 8-6, 8-7. All we have left is 8-8 in Chapter 8, credit cards. But we're also going to be doing tomorrow the fundamental accounting principle and permutations. These 2 parts of Chapter 11. All that's due August 5th, 11:59 p.m. And you can work on Review 3 if you want to as well. Even though that's not due till the end of the semester, if you work on that while preparing for this test, that can help you get a good grade on the test. Okay, so we got home ownership out of the way. We're about to do credit cards. Let's think of a word of the day involving either home or credit cards. Let's go with MasterCard. On Wednesday, August 2nd, send me an email for the word of the day and send me MasterCard, one company that does credit cards. Okay, we got 5 problems here. Some of these are short answer like that last one of the previous section, but some of these take a while. So here we have this payment thing again. If you're paying a credit card off, you're going to be, if you want your monthly payments, same formula. And it does say round to the dollar. Your credit card has a balance of $4,200. There's an interest rate. See, this is what happens with credit cards is the interest rate gets really high, 16%. You decide to pay off the balance over 5 years. And if you don't make any more purchases, now if you keep buying stuff, it's going to slow you down. But so if somebody said, okay, I had a bad job before, I was in and out of working, I had a lot of debt, I was in school paying a lot, and I ran my credit cards up real high, but now I have a good paying job and I don't need to spend more on this credit card. I just want to pay it off over the next 5 years. You could use this formula to figure out your monthly payments. And then how much interest will you actually pay too, as opposed to having $4,200 in your back pocket. Okay, so it's kind of like taking out a loan for $4,200. It's literally the same concept. So my payment formula is still the same. The present value is that $4,200 that I owe on the credit card. Right now, that's how much I owe. And then I got my good old R over N, and then the bottom has the bracket 1 minus, 1 plus, R over N again. And anytime you're doing payments, that's when that's the only time the exponent's negative. So what if somebody says, I want to, over the next 5 years, pay off this $4,200 on my credit card. Unfortunately, you have a 16% interest rate, which is going to make it go slowly. And then monthly payments, 12. And then we get to have the same fraction, 0.16 divided by 12 to the negative 12. And for whatever reason, this person said 5 years. But if you can do it faster, then you'll pay less in interest. You decide to pay the balance off over 5 years. So do the exponent first. 12 times 5 is 60. You'll end up making 60 payments over the next 5 years. I think this fraction might come out nicely. 0.16 divided by 12. Oh no, okay. I thought it would come out nicer than that, but 013333. So just like the house payments, I'm going to multiply by the top right away because it's all set to go. So the numerator is going to be a nice $56. Okay, then in the denominator, I'm going to do the fraction again, add 1 to it, then raise it to the negative 60th power. So do the fraction again just because it's a messy decimal. Add 1 so you're not rounding anything. Raise it to the negative 60th. That's how many payments you'll make in 5 years. Now I'm supposed to do 1 minus this, but I'm doing this minus 1, which is why it's backwards and negative. But if I unnegative it, then I'm good. And then I'm supposed to do 56 divided by this, but I'm going to do this divided by 56, which is backwards. That's why it's a messy answer, but if I 1 over it, it'll turn it correctly to here's your monthly payment. So either $102 or $102.14 if you add 1 to this 3 here. But I think they did say dollars. So $102, if you pay that every month for 60 months for 5 years, you'll pay back this loan and not, or this credit card debt, not owe them any more money. So if you just got a new job and you are making a lot more money than you used to make, then you could budget this out of your paycheck each month, get $102 out of your monthly paychecks, and set that aside to pay this off. So, but how much interest are you going to pay? Because you only owe $4,200, but 102 times 60 is going to be more than $4,200. In fact, it's more than $6,000 because 100 times 60 is 6,000. But if you pay $102 60 different times, you'll end up paying this credit card company $6,120. But you only owed them $4,200. So they're getting almost $2,000 of profit. That's how these companies make profits. It's like 1,900 and something, 1,920. You're paying them $1,920 in interest. So very similar to what we did with cars and houses, just it's with credit cards, but the concepts are all the same. And another realistic thing that happens to most of us in real life. So what if my credit card balance is $3,700 and I have a lower rate of 12%? That's good. And I'm going to pay it off over 4 years instead of 5 years. That'll help in the interest if you pay it off sooner. If there's no further purchases charged to the card, because if you keep buying stuff, then it's just going to keep going up. You must pay $97.44 each month. And you will pay a total interest of $977.12. So basically what they just said there is what we did on problem number 1. So they just redid problem 1 for us using that information. But this is kind of like problem number 2 of the house section where they're going to want me to compare it to another option. So here comes the other option. What if I decide to do it over 1 year rather than 4 years? How much more must you pay each month? Because if you do it in less time, it's going to cost you more each month. But then the benefit is less payment in interest. So first I got to decide, could I afford to pay more than $97 each month? And if I can, that'll definitely benefit me. Okay, so they were nice here. They could have made me do both parts of this, but they did the first half for me. Unlike here where I had to do a part A and a part B, they could have done that to me here, but for some reason they did Part A for us. So in essence, they did Part A for us, and $97 and what was it, 44 cents? That's the monthly payment. And the interest would be $977.12. So just keep this $977.12. Keep this in mind. So now it's like we're redoing the calculation, even though they did the first calculation for me. What if I have a $3,700 credit card debt? What if I'm getting a 12% interest rate? And of course, these things are always monthly. 12. 1 minus 1 plus, same fraction. Now that I think does come out nicely. So negative 12 always. And then we're going to do this in 1 year. In 1 year, you're only going to make 12 payments because there's only 12 months in a year. So 12 times 1 is 12. That's how many total payments you're going to make. And 0.12 divided by 12. 12 divided by 12 is 1, so this should come out nice. 0.12 divided by 12 is a nice 0.01. Exactly. So 3,700 times 0.01 is the numerator. The numerator is 37. And because this is exactly 0.01, I can do the bottom a whole lot easier. So the bottom's going to have 1 plus 0.01, which is literally 1.01. And then I need to raise it to the negative 12th power. Raise to the 12 negative. And I'm supposed to do 1 minus it, but I'm going to do it minus 1 backwards. It minus 1. So I need to unnegative that to make it unbackwards. And then I'm supposed to do 37 divided by this, but I'm going to do this divided by 37 backwards. And then I can hit my 1 over button. And if we're talking dollars, then 329, you'd have to add 1 to that 8 and make it a 9. 329. See how much larger that is? That might be too much for somebody to afford compared to $97. Now they did have cents here. Maybe they want cents. Let me double check. Round to the nearest cent. Yeah, okay. So 328.74. I need to change it to that. 328.74. So you're paying a lot more every month. That's a significant amount more. 328.74 every month, or would you rather pay 97.44 every month? That's, see, this is a case where somebody's probably going to have to do the lower amount because it's almost triple how much you're paying every month. 231.30. You'd have to pay 231.30 more every month to get that to come way down in interest. 231.30 more each month. But if you are able to afford that, let's see how much it makes a difference on the interest. Because now you're going to pay $328.74 every month for only 12 months. $328.74 times 12 months. This is how much you're physically paying. $328.74 times 12, you're going to pay $3,944.88. $3,944.88. But you only took you only owed $3,700. So minus $3,700, you're only paying $200 in interest. That's a lot better than $1,000 in interest. So the interest in this option is $244.88. So this is the point of this, is how if you do it in less time, your payments per month go up, maybe up too much than you can afford. But the less time you do it in, even though your monthly payments are more, the interest is less. That's the advantage. So if somebody suddenly got a really good job and they're paid a lot of money, much more than they used to make, it might be worthwhile for them to pay this higher amount every month, and then that'll save them a lot of money in the long run. They'll only be having to pay $244 of lost money rather than $1,000 of lost money. You will pay how much less in total interest? So less means you have to subtract them. So instead of paying $977.12 for the interest, you're only paying $244.88, and that's saving you're saving $732.24. $732.24. Now maybe the 1 year is just too extreme. So the first option was 4 years, the second option was 1 year, and that really made the payments higher, much higher. Maybe try 3 years or 2 years, and then the payments will be higher, but maybe not so extreme. And that'll even save you some interest too. Okay, finally, describe, there's two or three problems here of just short answers, so this won't take very long, but describe 2 advantages of using credit cards. So there's advantages and disadvantages to everything, as I said. May provide more amenities and difficulty to overspend. No, it's the other way around. It's too easy to overspend is the problem with them. Relatively low interest rates, definitely not. Credit cards always come with higher interest rates than anything else in life, really. So that's another downside to them, is the interest rates are very high. Lack of caps, no, they charge you whatever they want, really. So it must be this one. You get to use a product before actually paying for it. Yeah, that's literally why we have them, is most of us can't whip out $1,000 for a new TV out of our back pocket. So we buy one with a credit card, and that gives us time to pay for it. So we get it before we can actually afford to pay for it. Or if you need a source of temporary emergency funds, that's another thing too. So you can get a cash advance out of a credit card. So these are 2 benefits of it. If they didn't have any benefits, nobody would ever use them, but they do have some benefits. Here's some more. It says, get to use a product. We said that. No interest charge by paying the balance due. If you pay the whole balance every month, then you don't pay any interest. And that actually makes your credit score go higher too. Good credit score, yeah. See, they mentioned that. No need to carry around large amounts of cash. That could be bad because you could get robbed. And if your credit card is stolen and somebody spends with it, you're not responsible for the money. More convenient to use than checks, definitely. Consumer protections, as I just mentioned. That was the other one there. Extends shopping opportunities to purchases over the phone or the internet. You can't do that with cash. Simple tasks like renting a car or booking a hotel can be difficult without a credit card. Yeah, sometimes they won't do it unless you have a credit card. Monthly statements can help keep track of spending. Yeah, that's another thing too. If you're just spending things with cash, you might lose track of how much you're spending. May provide amenities such as free miles. Yeah, some of them give you rewards for using their credit card. And use as identification. Yeah, yep. See, there's a lot of good benefits to them, even though there's a lot of downsides too, and people go way into debt using them. Here come the disadvantages. Okay. 2 disadvantages are high interest rates. Yeah, that's bad. And the ability to use a product before paying for it. Now, that's an advantage. So the answer can't be A because it listed 1 disadvantage and 1 advantage. B, using credit cards are the fact that responsible use of credit cards is an effective way to build a good credit score. Well, that's an advantage, not a disadvantage. Using credit cards are the high interest rates, yes. And there's no interest charge. Well, that's another benefit, though. So it must be D. 2 disadvantages of using credit cards are the high interest rates, yes. And there's no cap on interest rates. Yeah, see, there's credit cards they charge in like the 20 or 30% interest. So if they know you're desperate, they'll just keep increasing that. Just like on rent, they'll keep increasing your rent every so often. So those are bad disadvantages. Okay, describe what is contained in a credit report. You can get a free credit report every year. And in addition to your credit score, it tells you things like what things have been opened, what credit accounts are opened, And you could say, wait a minute, I never opened a MasterCard account. Maybe somebody has stolen your identity if you check that out. So a credit report includes details about when all your credit accounts were opened, yes, their latest balance, and their payment history. I don't know if it has balances on it. A credit report ranges from 1 to 1,000. I think that's too much of a range. And a lower score is better. No, definitely a higher score is better. So it's definitely not B. A credit report ranges from 300 to 850. A higher score is better. A credit report includes the unpaid balance on the first day of the billing period. I think this is too much. Okay. Now it says, describe what is contained in a credit report. It does contain your credit score, obviously, but that's not the only thing that's in there. So, credit accounts open, their latest balance, payment history. I'm leaning between A or D here. I know for sure it's not B, because lower scores are definitely not better. You want a higher credit score. And I'm pretty sure it's not C because I don't think it has all this. This is too much information, I think. So A or D. I know it shows you all the individual things you have as accounts. So it may not be D just because that's not saying that part. Let me try A first. Okay. See, I knew it had more to it than just a credit score, but the credit score is important to look at too. If you have a good credit score, then you probably know there's not much issues going on, but the score ranges up to 850. It doesn't go all the way to 1,000. So that one's A apparently. But okay, we got 100% on this assignment now. And some of these problems took a long time, which is why there wasn't a lot of homework problems, but then there's a few short answers in there too. But we're all done with Chapter 8 now, and it was filled with some stuff that was realistic to people. We all use credit cards. Most of us get cars at some point in our life, and then you may be able to get a home instead of renting your whole life. So these are things that might help you in addition to getting a grade in this class. So we have one last day of learning new material for week 3. On Thursday, August 3rd, we're going to be doing 11.1 and 11.2. And those are definitely short answer problems, much easier to do. No big messy formulas or decimals anymore. In fact, all of those answers are integers. And that should help too. This section 8.8 wasn't so bad, and then 11.1 and 11.2, you should find them easier than some of these long, complicated calculations. So that's it for Wednesday, August 2nd.